We're bringing in consultants with fresh perspectives, Julian stated while sliding termination papers across the mahogany table. Your legacy systems are holding us back. My name is Caleb Mercer. I'm 47, and until that moment, I'd been the senior systems architect at Iron Veil Technologies for 18 years. I built their core software platform from nothing but caffeine and code when we were just 6 people working out of a warehouse in Seattle. I nodded without emotion, taking the packet. I didn't argue or plead, just said, "I understand," and started packing my desk while HR watched. The new CEO had been with us for exactly 3 months. Young guy, barely 40, brought in by the private equity firm that acquired us last year. He wore custom suits and talked about streamlining operations and modernizing our approach. Never once asked me how the system actually worked. That morning I'd watched him strut into the office with 2 consultants from some trendy firm in San Francisco. Didn't take a genius to figure out where things were headed. 18 years. I'd turned down better-paying jobs, missed my son's baseball games, spent countless nights troubleshooting server issues while everyone else slept. I did it because I believed in what we built. They gave me 30 minutes to clear out. I took 15. On my way out, I passed Donna from accounting. She'd been with me since the early days. Her eyes widened seeing my box of belongings. "Caleb, what's happening?" "Time for fresh perspectives," I said quietly. The security guard walked me out. Tyler, a good kid whose father and I fished together on weekends. He looked at the ground. "I'm sorry about this, Mr. Mercer." "Not your fault." I drove home in silence. No music, no calls, just the steady rhythm of windshield wipers clearing the Seattle rain. My wife Karen wasn't home yet. I set my box on the kitchen counter and pulled out my coffee mug, family photos, and a small external hard drive. Nothing company property. Then I made a pot of coffee and pulled out my personal laptop. I opened a folder I'd created years ago. Inside was documentation proving I'd written the core algorithm that powered Iron Veil's entire platform on my own time, using my own equipment. The timestamp and copyright registration predated my employment contract by 6 months. I'd offered it to the company on a perpetual license basis, something the new management clearly never bothered to research. I sipped my coffee, knowing I wouldn't need to wait long. The first system would fail within days. I met Harold Voss in 2004 at a programming conference in Portland. We bonded over a shared frustration with existing inventory management systems. He had just started Iron Veil with his brother-in-law and 3 developers. Their product showed promise, but couldn't scale. Over beers, I sketched out an algorithm that could solve their database bottleneck. He hired me on the spot. For the first 5 years, we worked 80-hour weeks. I missed my daughter Olivia's first steps because I was debugging server crashes. Karen nearly left me twice. "You're married to that company," she'd say. She wasn't wrong. When Harold had his heart attack in 2011, I stepped up. Not as CEO, I didn't want that job, but as the technical backbone. I kept things running while everyone panicked. When investors came sniffing, I showed them our growth metrics. When competitors tried poaching our talent, I convinced key engineers to stay. Harold sold the company in 2019, said he was tired, wanted to spend time with his grandkids. I understood but felt the first crack forming. The new owners were different, all quarterly numbers and growth projections. Then came the pandemic. Our system kept functioning when others failed. Our clients, hospitals, supply chains, government agencies, relied on us completely. I worked 20-hour days ensuring nothing broke. The board gave me a plaque and a bonus. Nice gestures. Last year, another acquisition, private equity this time. They installed Julian Keene as CEO. 2 weeks after he started, he canceled our annual development retreat. Unnecessary expense, he called it, though it cost less than his signing bonus. 3 weeks in, he reorganized the engineering team without consulting me. Brought in his Stanford buddies as strategy consultants. A month ago, he called me old school in a management meeting, said we needed to rethink our approach from the ground up. I saw it coming but kept my head down, kept the systems running. Karen noticed something was wrong. She's always been perceptive. "They're pushing you out, aren't they?" she asked one night. "Maybe. What are you going to do?" I just shrugged. But that weekend I updated my records, verified my copyright registration, made sure my personal code repositories were properly documented, not because I planned to cause trouble, just because I believe in being prepared. Through it all, I kept one thing to myself. The original algorithm, the mathematical heart of everything Iron Veil sold, had never actually been transferred to the company. I'd licensed it to them. There's a difference, a big one. 3 days after my termination, I was fixing our backyard fence when my phone started buzzing. 5 missed calls from Iron Veil's main number, 2 from Julian's direct line, 1 voicemail. "Caleb, this is Julian. We're having some issues with the core systems. Need your expertise. Call me back ASAP." I put my phone away and continued hammering. An hour later, more calls, texts from former team members. "Systems are crashing. Nobody knows what to do. The consultants broke something in the main algorithm. Clients are threatening to pull contracts." I finished the fence, showered, and made dinner for Karen and the kids. We watched a movie together. I turned my phone off. The next morning, I woke up to an email from Julian marked, "Urgent Consulting Opportunity." He offered me $300 per hour to come in and assist with transition issues. No mention of what happened 3 days earlier. I declined politely. By noon, their legal team contacted me. Something about proprietary technology and employee obligations. I forwarded it to my lawyer without comment. My lawyer called me an hour later laughing. "They clearly haven't read your original contracts," he said. "The algorithm's copyright is registered to you personally. You granted them a license that specifically prohibits modification without written consent. You're completely in the clear." That's when the reality truly hit me. 18 years. All that sacrifice, the missed recitals and birthdays, the sleepless nights, and they discarded me like outdated hardware. I walked to my home office and pulled out a business card I'd kept in my desk drawer for nearly a year. Elaine Winters, CTO of Meridian Systems. She'd approached me at a conference last spring, impressed with what Iron Veil had built. "If you ever want to change," she'd said, "we'd create something special for you." I'd been loyal then. Now I was free. I didn't call Elaine immediately. Instead, I drove to Lake Washington and sat watching boats cut through the water. For the first time in years, my thoughts weren't consumed by server loads or code deployments. My phone rang again. "Julian." "Caleb, we need to talk. The situation is critical." "I'm listening." "Our clients are threatening to leave. The consultants can't figure out your system architecture. We need you back." "As what?" A pause. "As a senior consultant. With appropriate compensation, of course." "And the outdated legacy systems?" Another pause. "We may have been hasty in our assessment." I watched a blue heron land gracefully on a dock across the water. "I'll think about it," I said. But I already knew I wouldn't be going back. Not as a consultant. Not on their terms. On the drive home, my mind was quiet, but resolute. The realization wasn't just that they needed me. It was that I didn't need them. 2 days later, I accepted Elaine's lunch invitation. We met at a quiet restaurant in Bellevue, away from Seattle's tech district. "I heard about Iron Veil's situation," she said after we ordered. "Their systems have been unstable for nearly a week." I nodded but said nothing. "Their clients are getting nervous, especially the healthcare networks." I took a sip of water. "They have capable engineers, but not the architect." She studied me. "You built something remarkable there, Caleb. Something that shouldn't be lost because of corporate short-sightedness." She slid a folder across the table. Inside was a job offer. Chief Innovation Officer, twice my previous salary. Equity, a team of my choosing. "We want to build the next generation of what you created," she said, "but with you properly valued this time." I told her I'd think about it, wanted to discuss it with Karen first. When I got home, there was a black sedan parked outside our house. Two men in expensive suits stood on my porch, Iron Veil's lawyers. "Mr. Mercer," the older one said, "we've been trying to reach you regarding an urgent company matter. I'm not with the company anymore. This concerns intellectual property developed during your employment. We'll need all your personal devices for examination. Standard procedure in these situations." I knew what they were after. Evidence that I'd taken company code or used company resources to develop my algorithm. Something to invalidate my copyright. "You'll need to speak with my attorney," I said, handing them his card. "I have nothing else to discuss." That evening, Julian called again. "Your lawyer is being difficult," he said. "This could get messy, Caleb. Legal battles, public statements. None of us want that." "What do you want, Julian?" "Come back. 6 months, full salary, help the transition team understand the systems, and we'll part ways amicably. The company keeps all rights to the technology, and you get a clean break." "The core algorithm was never Iron Veil's property," I said. "I licensed it to the company before I was even an employee." Silence. Then, "That's absurd. Everything you developed was work for hire. Check the original licensing agreement from 2004, it's still binding. That documentation doesn't exist. We've been through everything. Harold kept a copy. I kept a copy. The Copyright Office has a copy." More silence. "We'll need to verify that claim," he finally said, voice tight. "Take your time." The next day, they locked out all my former team members' access while the consultants attempted a system rebuild. By evening, 3 client servers had crashed completely. Karen found me in the garage methodically organizing tools I hadn't touched in years. "They're imploding, aren't they?" she asked. I nodded. "Does that make you happy?" I put down the wrench I was holding. "No. Good people work there. They don't deserve this." "Neither did you," she said softly. The following morning, Iron Veil's stock dropped 20% when news broke about critical system failures. My former team members started texting. "What did you do? Did you sabotage something before leaving?" I responded to each one the same way. I did nothing. They modified a licensed component without permission. By afternoon, Julian had gone from threats to bargaining, offering me a substantial consulting contract and public apology. I didn't respond. That evening, one of the consultants found the licensing agreement in Harold's archived files. Within an hour, Iron Veil's legal team contacted my attorney with a completely different tone. The trap they'd set had collapsed around them instead. A week after my termination, I met Harold for lunch. He'd been retired for 3 years but still kept tabs on the company he'd founded. "They really stepped in it," he said, shaking his head. "Trying to rebuild your algorithm from scratch? Idiots." We were sitting at his favorite diner in Tacoma, away from anyone who might recognize us. "Did you know this would happen?" I asked. Harold stirred his coffee. "I knew they didn't understand what they bought. These private equity guys never do. They see numbers, not architecture." He pulled out a worn folder from his briefcase and slid it across the table. "Remember this?" Inside was our original partnership agreement from 2004. Not the company employment contract, the personal agreement between Harold and me. It stated clearly that the algorithm remained my intellectual property, with Iron Veil receiving an exclusive perpetual license contingent on my continued employment or mutual separation agreement. "You protected me back then," I said. Harold nodded. "You were taking a risk joining a startup. I wanted you to keep ownership of your creation if things went south." "Did you tell the new owners?" "I tried. Mentioned it during due diligence. They weren't interested in technical details from the past." He made air quotes with his fingers. "Just wanted the assets and client list." That's when the full picture came into focus. Julian hadn't just fired me on a whim. The private equity firm was planning to strip Iron Veil for parts, sell off the client relationships and proprietary technology separately for maximum profit. They needed me gone because I was the only one who truly understood how everything connected. My termination wasn't about fresh perspectives. It was about making their asset stripping easier. "There's more," Harold said quietly. "Before I left, I put a clause in the sale agreement. If the core technology becomes non-functional for more than 10 consecutive days, I have the right to buy back the company at a predetermined price." I stared at him. Why would they agree to that? They didn't read the fine print, too focused on closing the deal. He smiled. "Also, I told them it protected their investment if the technology failed. So you can buy it back." "We can buy it back," he corrected. "I've got some money set aside and a few of the original investors are interested, but we'd need you." The pieces were shifting in my mind. Not revenge exactly. Something more precise. A correction. That evening, I received an email from an anonymous account. Inside was evidence that Julian and the consultants had been planning to sell our healthcare division to a competitor, a move that would have violated client confidentiality agreements and potentially exposed patient data. One of my former team members was clearly feeding me information. I forwarded it to my lawyer. The next day, 3 major clients announced they were suspending their contracts with Ironvale due to reliability concerns. Their combined business represented 40% of the company's annual revenue. By the weekend, the board called an emergency meeting. Julian was placed on administrative leave. On day 9 of the system failures, Ironvale's general counsel reached out with a settlement offer, a 7-figure payment in exchange for immediate license reinstatement. I didn't respond. That night, Karen and I sat on our back deck watching the sunset. "Harold wants to buy the company back," I told her. "With you? With me?" She took my hand. "Do you want that?" I thought about my 18 years, the code, the late nights, the missed family moments. "Not sure yet," I said honestly. Tomorrow would be day 10. Day 10 arrived with Ironvale's systems still offline. Financial analysts were predicting bankruptcy if the situation continued. Former colleagues reported the office was half empty, either layoffs or resignations. I met with Harold and my attorney at a private office downtown. Elaine from Meridian joined us by video call. "The board is desperate," my lawyer explained. "They've offered $3 million for a permanent license transfer." "And if we wait?" I asked. "Harold's buyback clause activates at midnight. The predetermined price is $8 million for the entire company." Harold leaned forward. "I've secured $4 million in backing. The other 4 would have to come from new partners." All eyes turned to Elaine on the screen. "Meridian is prepared to partner," she said. $4 million for 40% stake, contingent on Caleb joining as CTO with appropriate equity. I hadn't expected this twist. "I thought you wanted me at Meridian." "This is better," Elaine replied. "You'd be rebuilding something that matters to you, with the right team and support. And our companies could develop joint ventures that benefit both." My mind raced through possibilities. Taking back Ironvale would mean saving jobs, protecting client relationships built over decades, continuing work I believed in. "There's one more thing," I said. "The current employees. Many stayed loyal despite everything. They deserve protection." "Agreed," Harold said. "No layoffs for at least 6 months, and an employee ownership program." I nodded. "Then I'm in." We spent the day preparing documentation. My lawyer drafted the license transfer agreement, with specific conditions. Harold contacted board members who'd worked with him before, explaining the situation. Elaine prepared the partnership terms. At 5 p.m., we submitted formal notice of Harold's intent to exercise his buyback option. At 6 p.m., Julian called, panic evident in his voice. "Caleb, whatever you're being offered, we'll double it. Just fix the systems today." "It's not about money," I said. "Then what? A public apology? Your old job back, name it." "It's about building something that lasts, something that matters. This is business, not some idealistic." I hung up. By 8 p.m., Julian had been officially terminated by the board. They reached out directly, desperate to avoid the buyback. "We've made mistakes," the chairman admitted, "but we can still make this right." "You're right," I agreed. "By honoring Harold's buyback clause and facilitating an orderly transition, At 11:30 p.m., 30 minutes before the deadline, they conceded. The board approved Harold's buyback. Meridian's partnership was accepted. The paperwork was signed. At midnight, I sat at my kitchen table and wrote a simple email to my former team. The algorithm will be reinstated tomorrow morning. Iron Veil is under new ownership. No jobs will be lost. I'll explain everything at the all-hands meeting. Caleb. Karen sat beside me as I hit send. So you're going back, she said. Not back. Forward. I closed my laptop. Different company now, different terms. You'll be busier than ever. For a while, I admitted. But this time, I won't miss the important stuff. She smiled, skeptical but supportive. The next morning, I drove to the office for the first time since my termination. People stared as I walked through the lobby. Some looked confused, others relieved. Donna from accounting hugged me in the elevator. What happened? She whispered. Long story, I said. But the short version? Sometimes you have to let something break to fix it properly. The conference room was packed for the all-hands meeting. Harold stood at the front, looking energized despite his age. Elaine joined by video. I took my place beside them, feeling the weight of what we were about to rebuild. It wasn't revenge. It was restoration. 6 months after regaining control of Iron Veil, we held a product launch at the Seattle Convention Center. The room was packed with clients, industry analysts, and media. Harold opened with the company's history and vision. Elaine spoke about our partnership with Meridian. Then it was my turn. I stepped to the podium, aware that Julian was sitting in the back row. He'd landed at a competitor and was clearly there to gather intelligence. Today we're unveiling Integrasphere, I said, a completely reimagined system architecture that builds on our core strengths while embracing new possibilities. The screens behind me displayed the interface, streamlined, powerful, elegant. What makes this system unique isn't just the technology, it's the people behind it. Our team, many who've been with us for over a decade, built this together. I nodded to the front row where my development team sat. And we've restructured our company so they have an ownership stake. Their commitment deserves nothing less. The audience applauded. I noticed Julian shifting uncomfortably. We've also established the Iron Veil Foundation, which will open source select components of our technology for use in education and public service. More applause. Finally, I'm pleased to announce that every client affected by last year's system failure will receive 2 years of service at no charge, plus migration support to our new platform. The room erupted. It was a bold move financially, but Harold, Elaine, and I had agreed. Rebuilding trust was worth the cost. As we opened for questions, Julian slipped out the back door. He'd come expecting to see a company limping back from disaster. Instead, he witnessed one transformed by it. His new employer's stock dropped 8% by closing bell. Sometimes the best revenge isn't striking back, it's rising higher. 1 year after the buyback, I drove to Lake Washington on a clear Saturday morning. No laptop, no phone, just a fishing rod and a small cooler. Harold was waiting in his boat, silver hair beneath his worn baseball cap. Right on time, he said as I climbed aboard. We navigated to his favorite spot and cast our lines in comfortable silence. Board approved the employee ownership expansion, he mentioned after a while. Another 5% allocated. Good. I watched my line. They've earned it. We caught nothing for an hour. Just talked about our families, baseball, anything but work. Eventually, Harold asked, "Do you ever think about how it all played out?" I considered the question. The past 18 months had been the most challenging and rewarding of my career. Taking back the company, rebuilding the systems and the culture, finding balance between work and home. I think about the algorithm sometimes, I admitted. How something I created alone in my apartment became the foundation for everything. Regrets? I shook my head. I could have left for another job. Started my own company, but I stayed because I believed in what we were building together. And now? Now I know the difference between loyalty and ownership. between building something and belonging to it. My line suddenly went tight. I stood, carefully reeling in a decent-sized bass. After we got it in the boat, Harold laughed. Still got the touch. Later, as we headed back to shore, I noticed the Ironvale building visible in the distance, its logo catching the sunlight. It wasn't the same company anymore. Better in some ways, still finding its way in others, but it was ours, not just mine, not just Harold's or Elaine's. Everyone who built it piece by piece. Some things you can't own alone, some things you shouldn't.